That's already a shit show. I'm Derek O'Shea, and this is the Derek O'Shea Show.
To the revolution.
Sweet. How's it going, Shane? Thank you so much for joining me on the Derek O'Shea Show. It means so much to me, man. I think we'll just get right into it. I think everyone kind of knows who you are on my show because we watched you debate the president of the universe and the other guy, whoever his name is. What was it like to grace the stage with her?
Oh man, the president of the universe is
Stacey Abrams.
Yeah, she was really nervous, man. It was I for a second I felt bad. Like I'm a caring guy. I like to be that empathy. Like, hey, like you're trying to be the governor of Georgia, and obviously you've played the president of the entire known universe. Calm down. Her literal hand was shaking at the podium, man. And no lie, like her right hand, that or she's going through withdrawals. I don't know, coke or
Oh my God.
I don't know what it was. But this, man. At first I felt bad, but then I was like, you know what? These people are just people, man. She's just a lady who's standing up here, who's never had to probably face off against a guy, especially like me. Brian Kemp, she's probably fought, hayseeds like that her entire life, but whatever.
Right. Wow. Let's just take it back a little bit. So I'm genuinely curious. What drives a man to run for any seat? Because I know you've run a couple of times. So what is that driving factor?
Yeah, this is the third run. I think I had different motivations each time. The first one, man, I was just really pissed at my representative, fairly foolhardy. Thought, hey, I'm a Marine combat vet, highly decorated at that. The Republican Party is here. I'm a constitutional autist, whatever part of the Constitution you want to talk about, let's go talk about it in depth and all that kind of stuff. I thought I was going to be God's gift to the GOP and set it on fire, go up there and show Thomas Massey a thing or two. So I got crushed in the primary. I think I only got 30% of the vote in the primary for the Republican Party at that time. And then I don't know, 2020 U.S. Senate, I was like, well, what's next after 2018? And saw that, this David Perdue had a 20% constitutional voting record down here. I was like, this guy sucks too. Let's go out there and beat the fuck out of him.
Okay.
So there was that. But during that campaign, man, that was COVID, right? That was, the impetus. And Brian Kemp, the tyrant down here in Georgia, came out and threatened everybody with force and coercion and basically said, if you're non-essential, you can stay home. And if you have neighbors and friends or you see groups of people more than 10 that aren't abiding by my dictates as the king of Georgia, well, then you tell them to disperse or you come tell us. And I was just like, whoa, man, that was this is the First Amendment's gone. It's gone by decree, and nobody blinked. Nobody said shit. And I was just like, this doesn't get walked back. This is now the new normal. This is a precedent for executive order. And I mean, honestly, I was fairly distracted with Brian Kemp during my 2020 run because I was like, dude, this is a different time to be alive. So I carried it around for 2 years. Probably not the healthiest grudge, but obviously got to let it go.
We all carry around shit, man. It's just how you deal with it. Wow, yeah. It's funny. I like that you bring that up because there's a lot. We have conservatives and libertarians in my show, and so I think a lot of conservatives like to pretend COVID never happened. And especially the Republican Party. So it's interesting that you say that. Did you bring that up to him when you talked to him, personally?
Oh, I mean, behind the scenes, did I bring it up to him? No, there was no time, man. There were the initial greetings on stage. They came up. Both of them were nice. They shook my hands. I had met Brian before a long time ago, and he was a jackass back then. He's a kid. You look at Brian Kemp and you're like, you're just an old kid. And you're really a child, with when he didn't realize like the question, especially when it was just like, hey, I got to ask him the question of
yeah, that's right.
And you just saw him like kind of swallow and be like, is that a question? And you're like, man, yeah, that's a question, man. I don't know if you went to Georgia indoctrination like I did, but like we got indoctrinated probably by the same people. They taught us the difference at least between a statement and a question in English classes. So, yeah, he's just he's a puppet, and he obviously got shown out during that whole thing. So yeah, they're nice.
Yeah. He when I watched that debate, like he definitely was the weakest, and it was like, so I grew up in South Carolina, and we have people like Lindsey Graham and McMaster's and crap, and so and to be honest, I have fallen victim to voting for the lesser of two evils or whatever, and voted for Lindsey Graham when I was like 18. Like, it was too stupid because I was just like, well, I don't want a Democrat in the office. Like,
18 is the last age you can actually vote for Lindsey Graham and be like, man, I voted for the two evils, right? Like that. That's the last point where everybody's like, well, okay, you get it.
Right. It's like some of my friends that like have voted for Obama when they were 18. I was like, you get a pass. That's it though. After that, it's over. You got to grow up. So like when you were a Republican at first, and then you moved to the Libertarian Party.
So, yeah, in full disclosure, in like growing up, red, white, and blue, just spangly, like sparkly, bled it, like stand up, cry, and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Look at people crossways if they weren't doing the same indoctrinated shit I was doing. And it was 2015 where I became a libertarian and like literally a card holding member. But I knew, I was like, the libertarians they're not doing shit. Like they're putting up like Bill Weld and Gary Johnson and guys like that. And I was like, I'm not behind Bill Weld. And I'm Gary Johnson goes up there and is not as presidential as I think somebody. I don't, even if you're a libertarian, hey man, we've got great people in this space that are super duper smart, especially the economists, right? And you're like, put one of those guys up that can talk circles around these guys. That didn't happen. So in 2016, I made up my mind I was going to run in the 2018 election for the primary as a Republican, because I was like, you can't do it as a libertarian. And then, boy, I'll tell you what, when I ran, I saw what the GOP machine was down to the local level, and it's united. I will tell you that. The people who are in positions of power are united as libertarians. And man, they'll stab you in the front and the back and everywhere else that they can. And if you're not that guy that's going to take the special interest money, that you're going to stand on the Constitution and people's rights, and they don't want anything to do with you. It doesn't matter if you are, from Marine Special Operations, you combat, decorated, and everything else. Like that fucking stuff doesn't matter with those guys. The fact that you're a local guy that grew up in the district, that lives in the district, doesn't matter. The fact that you know the Constitution cold doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters to the GOP. They want guys that go, yeah, we'll take your votes and we'll take your money. You make sure we're in there and we get reelected. That's your guy. And that's who I ran against, Rob Woodall. That's how I felt. Like, I was like, man, I can't deal with this GOP machine anymore. Like, they'll say one thing to your face and then they'll just stab you right in the damn guts.
Yeah, I've kind of experienced a little bit of that. My stepfather ran for town council, and anytime he kind of went outside of the box, which he's kind of like me. He's like, sure, he ran as a Republican, but that dude is not Republican. Oh. he's more libertarian, has some moderate things, but mainly libertarian. And he got ousted. It's amazing how they will just eat their own and just be happy with it. I think it's funny that people are like, well, at least we're not as bad as the Democrats. What would you say to that?
It's different.
Okay.
And that's the thing, is force and coercion from both parties. One wants to take your cannabis, one wants to take your guns. And they both, and the thing is they both will have the legislation passed so that at the end of the day, your local police officer who's 18, 19 years old, who doesn't know shit, who's also been indoctrinated his entire life, will go out and take your stuff. And it doesn't matter if it's First Amendment stuff. It doesn't matter if it's Second Amendment. It doesn't matter if it's Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, Seventh. It doesn't matter what it is. That police officer, at the end of the day, once that legislation is passed, He doesn't care if it was passed by Republicans or Democrats.
Right.
And now you look at the amalgamation of this beast, right? This beast has grown to the point where nothing ever comes off the books, ever. And that's the problem, is those guys, they get carrots dangled in front of them to go out and go after peaceful people. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the biggest thing that both Republicans and Democrats miss. It doesn't matter if you approve of somebody's lifestyle. It doesn't matter if you approve of who they love, who they worship, like, I don't think skin color is a thing except for, really, really progressive idiots. None of that matters to, the libertarian types, because
right.
At the end of the day, if you're not trespassing against me, if you're not taking my stuff, if you're not hurting people, like, what the I don't care if you're doing drugs. I don't care if you're sleeping with a dude. I don't care if you want to cut off your dick. Like, I don't care about any of those things.
Right.
That's your business. And for me, that's where I think both Republicans and Democrats get it wrong, is they're still sending cops with badges and guns after peaceful people. And at the end of the day, I think that's just, it's not the American way.
Yeah. And on that, I'm genuinely curious, as like somebody who's libertarian, what do you think is the like answer to deal with like our open air drug use and our homeless epidemic that is in every city?
Yeah, I think we have a giant mental health crisis in America. Giant.
Yeah.
And what you could do is legalize the natural psychedelics first and foremost, right? Mm-hmm. Natural psychedelics, extensive research. I got to tell you, I'm pretty high op tempo, pretty mission oriented. Like, I get up super early, I stay up late, I work my ass off. Things like like psilocybin and cannabis. As a Marine veteran, like, I didn't even know I had PTSD for a very long time. Like, I was just like, no, what are you talking about? That's a weakness. It's like, that's not me. Okay. That is one of those things that helps create clarity in mental health. It helps restore empathy and starts to remove mission right from your life. And that's how, that's my personal story. But for everybody else out there, when you look at, what the psychoactive components are in psilocybin and THC and all those kind of things, what you're looking at is a non-addictive, non-invasive type of, chemical that doesn't eat your brain like the quote unquote government studies said in the 60s and 70s, so that they could, launch the war on drugs and stuff like that. So you start addressing mental health, and you actually look at over history. Man, like, there's a great book. It's called The Key to Immortality. And this book, I mean, listen to it, because it's giant for, first and foremost. And it goes through every, Romantic, Germanic, and, Aramaic type of language. And the guy who wrote it, Brian Moraski, I think is his name. He is like Indiana Jones meets a linguist, meets a biologist, and he's done these studies throughout antiquity where he shows that the psychedelics that people used in their communion with spiritualness and all that fun stuff, which I think we're seriously missing today. They called it the glue of humanity, because it gave you the ability to let go of yourself, your own ego, and start looking at different people's paths. Like, hey, they're probably doing this for a reason, or whatever it was. And so you start to give that love to other people, right? Like that, hey, listen, that's another person, that's somebody's daughter, that's somebody's wife, that's somebody's son, that's somebody, whatever it is. You start to look at the world a little bit differently through those eyes. And I think when you start talking about the open air epidemics that we have in terms of like homelessness, drug use, and all that kind of stuff, especially in very crowded, very temperate areas like San Diego or San Francisco, or places that are just warm where you don't freeze to death, because I don't think Minnesota has the homeless problem and the drug problem that those guys do. You start to look at a very cheap, easy, free solution that might actually combat what we're seeing with the alphabet boys being entangled with the drug cartels in different countries and different governments and different foreign agencies that want to manipulate the public here in the United States. So it's an idea. It's on the side of freedom. That's what America was built on. Is like, hey man, I as long as you're over there doing your thing and not hurting anybody, I don't give a shit.
Okay, So it does like a lot. I like it. I was like,
I got soapboxes, man.
No. I love it. No. There's because so like because I'm genuinely curious. So it's like I get the legalization of like drugs, and I'm with you on that. Especially like the war on drugs doesn't work. Just like Biden's trying to do this war on guns right now with semi-automatic and assault weapons and stuff like that. It just doesn't work. And we're just going to create more problems. But if someone is using meth on the street and they're choosing to stay there and they don't want to leave, and it's around your family and it's around your home.
So this is where libertarians really excel, right? What we have, what we don't like in libertarianism is public property, right? We think private property should reign. And so when you look at roads or sidewalks or parks or whatever it is, first and foremost in libertarianism, property rights reign. So if you're on my sidewalk and you're shooting up meth, man, I'm going to tell you, you got to go. And with private security forces and stuff like that, which you can pay for and you will have better responses. Let's talk about this for a second. A lot of people can't get to the idea of a private security force, right? Why on earth do we think the government does security? Like, it absolutely boggles my mind. Everything that they do, they create problems, and then they try to bandage problems with more problems, and it just never ever fucking works. So when we look at private market solutions, can you imagine if Chick-fil-A ran police forces? Your customer service would be through the roof. Absolutely through the roof, and you could have competing contracts. So if your contract says, listen, we're only going after these hardcore criminals, we're only going to go after people who rape, murder, who coerce, who steal, who are vandals, they're really, hey, you can actually point your finger at these people and go, that's a criminal, like a real no kidding criminal,
right?
We have a solution for that these guys, they have a limited amount of resources and they have a limited amount of money, and they're trying to please their customer base. So what are they going to do? They're going to use their resources like we use our resources for the best return on investment, ROI. It's the private market through and through. And if they're trying to make sure that you're a happy customer and you got a guy that's shooting up heroin on your street corner, man, I'll tell you right now, not only are they going to probably approach this guy a little bit differently than with like their 9mm out, ready to just blast this guy into oblivion, right? They're probably going to be like, hey, here's a Chick-fil-A sandwich. And at the same time, hey, let's get you off this guy's private property and maybe take you to a charitable area that we can at least introduce you to something in terms of mental health. It's not going to be a perfect world. And that's what I'll tell you right now. This is what libertarians get hit with all the time. Well, and you're a utopia. No, it's not a utopia.
Right.
We just default to this position that the state is not the answer because it is force and coercion. The 99.999% of us go throughout our day without doing violence to anybody else. And that's the way everything should be. Every like critique I see, which I talk to all my family members who think libertarians a bunch of full of shit stuff, like because they think it's like they take the utopian idea, and I'm with you. Why I'm just like, well, is it better than what we're doing now? Is the question that you should ask, and if the answer is yes, then you should ask why, and can we change something new? And I think it's just like fear. I think people are genuinely scared of the idea of freedom. Well, all right, let's back up. All right. So you nailed it and 100%. Why is that though? Yeah. Nailed it. Yes. So you got to ask yourself, well, why is everybody scared? Another great author, John Taylor Gatto, look him up, 30-year veteran of the New York school system, teacher of the year, and he wrote against the school system. You ever wonder why America is educated the way it is? America's education system came from Prussia in the 1700s from progressives who were trying to homogenize their state so that there was a single state culture, so that when they said, hey, go to work, They had workforce. And now when we need to go over there and kick those guys' asses and spill blood, you had a populace that was ready to mobilize, send their young men to kick ass, and then the people around them to mechanize behind them, right? That was the purpose of the progressive system that was implemented in Prussia in the 1700s. That was brought over here in the 1860s and 1870s by a guy named Horace Mann. And those guys did it for the same reason. And then Henry Ford and John Carnegie on the backside of that funded the hell out of it and said, we need these guys for our industry. So, yep, make them smart enough to read, make them smart enough to do a little bit of math, make them smart enough to push the levers and buttons and all that kind of bullshit. And then we got them. We got them. About the same time, they're instituting the 1913, Federal Reserve Act in D.C. under Woodrow Wilson. Not a coincidence. All this stuff gets pushed in this giant progressive, movement in the early 1900s, and then all of a sudden, now 100 years later, we're sitting there going like, "What happened?" They took you at 5 years old, and they indoctrinated 99.9% of us in government, youth, indoctrination camps. You stood up every morning, you said the Pledge of Allegiance. And I know this is not a popular thing to say with Republicans, but I will tell you, when you do this every day, this is indoctrination. If you have state approved knowledge, this is indoctrination. And to think that it's across the board, what a limited scope of view. The question then becomes is like, what should it be? What are you passionate about? What is your purpose? What does your gift give back to humanity? Why aren't you practicing this? Why aren't you, carrying on, I don't know, a family business, entrepreneurship, understanding economics, not Keynesian economics that they teach at, all of these places, but like Austrian economics where savings and peace and consent are a thing, not the manipulation and the speculators. I'm telling you, like this is the reason why we fear. We were told so many things: the war on drugs, DARE, all this bullshit about drugs in general, right? Has anybody ever smoked a ball as a Republican? Has anybody done some mushrooms? What do you want to kill? What do you want? You literally, after pot, you want to go and have a bag of Doritos, and after mushrooms, you probably want some fruit. And that's it. That's all. You want peace and love and happiness, and you want to be left the fuck alone. That's the thing, is like, once you just start destroying that fear, which I'm going to tell you right now, psychedelics destroy fear. And that's why they are absolutely banned across the globe, thanks to the Catholic Church. And that goes back even further. But when we start looking at this from an objective angle, this is why the American public was so easy to manipulate in 2020, is because they use weapons grade defense, psychological operations in terms of fear. You never had a chance because they took you at 5 years old.
Dang. First of all, I'm offended. I'm an ex-teacher. I know. I was like a special education teacher. I wasn't the real thing. I just helped the kids that needed more help.
There's a special education Pledge Allegiance joke in there somewhere.
There has to be. But you're right. I freaking hate public school. I left it for a reason. I'm doing what I do for a reason, because I couldn't take it, especially as a male, especially as somebody who has thinks outside the box. I'm not welcome. I tried to apply to be a history teacher. I was like the favorite person teacher on staff for all the middle school boys, and I was just like, this is a shoe-in. They already love me. The kids love me. They know I work well with kids, and they started asking me questions about how I would teach. And they didn't like any of my answers. Yeah. because it wasn't like tests and homework, and like it wasn't like just the repetitive wheel bullshit that we do in school all the time of like, well, we got to make sure these kids are learning. How else are we supposed to learn? I'm like, this kid's in 6th grade. What is he really learning? like, what are we talking about here? Interesting. Yeah, I like that. I think I remember you talking about that on stage. For the debate, and I clipped up a clip of you talking about private school and just like going into the community, and all the leftists and people on the right too hated what I had to say and hated what you had to say, because they think they can't see it. They're just like, they're like, this is a stupid idea. It would never work.
Well, and that's and here's the greatest trick of the government, right? Is they put these people in your lives at a granular level. Those people, like, I don't know, like my teachers and Miss White, Miss Black, Miss Smith, whoever, dude, they were great people. They were, I mean, seriously, some of the nicest, warmest, most loving people who had hearts of gold that didn't know the history of their own profession. My
Right.
wife didn't know the history of her own profession until she read John Taylor Gatto.
Oh,
And then she was like, holy shit. I was like, yeah, there's a reason why they don't teach you this in your profession. It's because you would probably walk out of the fucking room and take up
right.
something different. So yeah, man, like it is hard to hear because you have good memories. You have friends, lifelong friends that you met during those years. You did learn some things. It's not that you didn't, but here's the thing is if it could be done differently, if it could be done to tailor education to each and every person, then what would it be? And the thing is, I'll tell you what it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be standardized, not even in the least, right? Not even close.
Right. As a teacher too, that was like the thing we were always teaching is like teaching for the standardized tests and making sure the kids do well so that we can get more money. And that was like always the thing. It was more important that they just do well and then on the state tests than it was for them to actually know what the hell they're talking about. And all that stuff.
You got a question in there from Gary that says, ask Shane, guns or no guns?
He keeps asking. He also wants to know. Yeah. We always show the guns on the show.
Lots of guns, baby.
Yeah,
whatever
okay.
guns you want. Pressers, please, so I don't have to hear you shoot.
I think he also wants to know if you voted for Trump. We have a lot of Trumpers in my chat. What are your thoughts on Trump?
Well, boy, here's going to be some unpopular stuff, guys, but it's the truth. Listen,
Say it.
I don't have TWS. I really don't. Or is that what it's called? Trump? TDS, right? Like,
yeah.
No, I here's the thing is, I think Trump is more American than most Republicans these days. I do. However, and I'm, here's the big but, right? I think he's a New York Democrat. I think he's always been a New York Democrat from the 1970s, from the 1980s. I think he's a New York Democrat. What didn't sit well with me with Trump was the gun statement, right? The violation of the Fourth Amendment, where he's like, take the guns first and then due process later.
Yes.
No, man, that's not the Constitution.
And the bump stocks.
And then the ATF went out and was like, we're going to redefine, what a automatic weapon is in terms of firing rate. And so now you can throw an apparatus on a gun, but next, what do they have to do? They have to ban belt loops. For anybody that understands, how to rapid fire, where you stick your thumb through, your redneck hole and then pull on that, that booger picker stick and like it's over, right? So they can't do that. So Trump really lost me with that kind of stuff.
Okay.
When he renewed the Patriot Act, when he renewed the FISA courts, when he renewed the Patriot Act, I was like, you know what? He's entertaining, and is he better than Biden? Yeah, he's better than Biden. But at the end of the day, I was just like, I need more. And that's the thing is, I'm not one of those guys that settles anymore. And I stopped doing that 2008-ish when I voted for Ron Paul, when it was McCain versus Obama. And here's the thing is, having been in the Middle East, you could have probably said, oh, you know what? I bet if McCain's president, he's just going to bomb these guys right off the face of the map. And then what happened? Barack Obama comes in there and then claims the title for more bombs dropped than anybody ever. It was like every 30 seconds he was dropping a bomb. And it's just like, well, I don't know. So my conscience in terms of like writing in Ron Paul in 2008, like that was my guy. And I left that booth and I was just like, wow, now I don't have to defend whoever wins. That was the most freeing feeling in terms of like recognizing some power. It's like, I don't have to be associated with either one of these assholes. And I wish more people were willing to stand alone and not, worry about followers and things like that. Because when you start to buck back against the system, which is happening more and more, 20% of people are Democrats, 20% of America is Democrats. And then you have like 60% of people who's not. And so they either vote Libertarian or Green, or they're independent, they don't vote at all. So basically 60% of America doesn't agree with the 20% that's voting on who's ruling everybody. So like I said, there are positive and negatives about both, and they all kind of carry over. But at the end of the day, what do you get with both Democrats and Republicans? It's force and coercion. You get spending, you get people who are incentivized by the Federal Reserve, by their cronies who get the money first, and then, obviously put it back into politics. And that's it. And those are the people you get recycled and regurgitated until the Fed ends. This will be the way it is. But the good news is the Fed's coming to an end pretty soon.
Yeah. What, with the Fed coin? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, XRP, Ripple, all that, all the bullshit crypto stuff, minus Bitcoin, which is not the same. And then, it's all coming to an end because they don't have an answer for what's happening with Bitcoin right now.
Yeah. What is,
oh boy. Here we go. You ready? You gonna open that can of worms? Let's go.
Well, let me just ask this question first. Papa wants to know, like, how do you convince somebody to vote for other than the two parties? And I always wonder too, is a third party option ever going to be viable?
Well, so here's the deal: is when we look at quote unquote the constitutional republic, which I will tell you we're not. We're not even a damn democracy anymore.
Right. Thank you.
If anything, we're a banana republic or an oligarchy or a communist state. And
I always say we're a corporatist oligarchy.
Yeah, kind of fascist, right? Like,
yeah.
When you got, this Pierre lady who's up there answering questions from reporters talking about, what is the federal government going to do to reel in Elon Musk? And
oh my God, that question yesterday.
Dude,
that was the worst. I couldn't believe that.
Well, we're keeping an eye on it. But here's the thing: is Elon Musk has an entire platform that is the most viral platform on Earth that is now censored to a degree. And these people are shitting their pants. I got off track. The original question from your guy out there on YouTube, and excuse me if Papa, is how do we convince people? Here's the thing: is I'm not here to convince you to vote third party. I'm not.
Right.
Third party is a protest vote. If you have runoffs and stuff, depends. I'm not going to tell you never vote Republican. Like Thomas Massey, good guy, man. Rand Paul, I know both of them. They're pretty good dudes. But here's the thing: is it doesn't matter, because no matter what those people do, you have way more power to act at your local level with your sheriff, who is the executive, who can nullify any law per Article 5 and Article 6 of the Constitution that's not withstanding of the Constitution per Article 6, Section 2 of the Constitution. So when we're talking about, like, voting third party, like I'm not going to tell you third parties are ever going to win at the federal level. I'm not going to ever tell you that.
Right.
They're not. Will they win at local levels? They do sometimes here and there where they can run on a ballot. But at the end of the day, it's not. I don't even know how secure voting is. Right? Like, I don't know. Like, okay, you want to go cast a vote? Great. It doesn't mean something if it's a QR code. Can you read a QR code? Because I can't read a QR code. It'll say the names you voted for below. Does that actually mean that that's what's going into the machine? No, not actually. So we've got a lot of giant issues that I would tell you. I wouldn't worry about so much voting third party or even at the federal level. I would be very concerned with what your sheriff is enforcing. I would be concerned with what your mayors are telling your police chiefs to enforce and what not to enforce. And that's where you can have the greatest effect, especially on your local lives. So, take it from a guy who's done some work here and doing things like nullification for civil asset forfeiture, cannabis, and psilocybin in North Georgia, and it's becoming effective.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I've always said, like, I'm more concerned about my attorney general than I am my state attorney general than my president. Especially after COVID. If that doesn't tell you anything, I don't know what will.
Yeah.
Oh man, so what is your thoughts on, like, the one critique that I see is, like, might be a viable critique when it comes to libertarianism is the corporation thing. It's like, which corporation do we allow to run our lives for the day, kind of thing,
Oh, okay.
Like, if it's a BlackRock or if it's an Amazon, and we're just like, yeah, well, if everyone's free and there's no regulations, obviously those people are going to be the most powerful of the land. And so what is the push? What is your thoughts on that?
Okay, so we're going to have to talk money. We're going to have to talk Federal Reserve, and we're going to have to talk communications protocol. Ready, kids? Here we go.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, oh, I really needed a nap. So the communications protocol between human beings, what is it? If you don't know a person and you want to transact with them, we, the normal people of the world that don't have the badges and the guns, that sit there and say, give us your money through force and coercion. What do we have to do? We have to meet people through ideas, through consent. We have to trade with people. We have to provide either a good or a service to somebody to trade with them money. What is money? Money is just something that we agree on holds a certain amount of value. And when you start to look at who creates money, how money has been created, the history of money, this is where Austrian economists really kick ass in terms of Austrian versus Keynesians. Right now, what you have in power and what you've had in power for over 100 years are the Keynesians. The Keynesians live on a debt enslavement type of economy. So when you look at a dollar, let's just say I have a dollar, I am the Federal Reserve, I make it, now I loan it to you. You owe me $1, but you also owe me interest. So how are you ever going to pay me back the interest in dollars if I give you $1? You're never going to be able to. That's debt and enslavement. Now, here's the other thing with Keynesian economies. Keynesian economies, you have to spend more money faster all the time as Keynesians, or else you get recessions and then depressions if it goes on long enough. So in our case right now, what you're seeing is these people trying to keep the economy alive by spending trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. The problem is when you unpegged from gold in the 1972 or 1971 under Bretton Woods II agreement, and then Richard Nixon defaulted on the gold standard and said, "Hey, listen, we're not giving France our money. We're not giving the Netherlands our money. We're not giving any of these European powers that loaned us money in gold. We're not giving that back. Here's a Federal Reserve IOU note that's worth nothing." So when inflation went through the roof, we had the interest rate spike up to over 20 something percent. When you're looking at house loans in like 1977 at 22%, that was a cause and effect relationship when you unpegged from gold. So when you did that, now you have to come down all the time in your interest rate. The problem is we basically got to zero. And when you get to zero, there's nowhere else for the Federal Reserve to go. So what do they have to do? Now they're going to say, well, to slow inflation, we're going to have to start to jack up the interest rate. Mm-hmm. And what does that do? That slows down the economy. You go into a recession. It goes on long enough, you go into a depression. I will tell you, saw this coming in 2019 as Austrians were like, oh, it's here again, guys. Like, buckle up. And that's when you saw the UK get out of the European Union with Brexit. And a soft departure because they didn't trust the banks and they didn't trust the politicians over there with their resources. So how do we fix this? I know it's not going to be popular, but you have to have hard assets. You have to have something that's valuable. So what makes money valuable? All right, here's Karl Menger, 1800s Austrian economist. What makes money, really valuable? It has to have what's called a high stock to flow ratio, which means it has to be saleable, liquid, has to be saleable over time, space, scales, and it has to have proof of work. Those are the 4 attributes that make hard money. So gold, right? Gold, saleable over time because you can't inflate gold. Gold has an inflation rate of about 1.5% a year. You can't chemically make it. You can't, you have gold itself is proof of work that some dudes went out and struggled to get a couple flakes of gold to bring it into town and be like, what could I get for this?
Orchids.
Right. Exactly right. So that's proof of work. Now, follow me here. Now, you run into this thing called the Byzantine generals problem, where now moving gold around the world is kind of a tough thing to do in a world type of economy where it's trying to keep up with the internet, right? So what did they do? They created fiat. Now, fiat's really good at moving around. Now, this is the saleable over space part. If you can move money around the world fast, then you can settle remittances really quickly. this is super valuable in terms of helping people trade. It's not so good in retaining value because cash, when it's not backed by anything, they can inflate it to the moon, which is a tax on you, your savings, and everything that you've ever worked for. Now, over scales, how scalable is gold? Well, you can divide gold down to damn near anything, right? Because flakes and sheets and everything else. Now, with dollars and cents and all, yes, also scalable. The problem is gold and fiat don't do all of these things. And fiat is not proof of work, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have a money that is saleable over time, can't be inflated, that can be moved through remittance around the world in record time, that's over space. And then over scales, is it scalable to the entire population of the globe? And is it freely traded where there's no rulers, just rules for everybody? There is one thing in this world that does that and does it better than everything else, and it has a higher stock to flow ratio than gold, and that is Bitcoin. Mm. I hope people's minds are absolutely melting. And when it's this simple to explain to people, and you go, not cryptos, not all that other stuff. Cryptos are centralized. Cryptos are fiat currencies that are a distraction from what the original was, Bitcoin, when they nailed it. And here's the thing is, Bitcoin wasn't the original. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, Bitcoin was the original. No, Bitcoin was what lasted because they finally got it right. And Bitcoin, launched in 2008, was the answer to when they fucked us the last time in the last stock market meltdown, and they bailed out the banks and they bailed out the corporations. A lot of cypherpunks said, never fucking again. And they got together and they said, this is how we saw it through cryptographic communication with an energy barrier, proof of work, blockchain technology that fixes all of this kind of stuff. And this is me to you. It's internet cash that they can't screw with. At the end of the day, if you hold your keys to your cold wallet, which is like a savings account, and now you're your own bank, it's over for those guys. And they don't have an answer for that because they can't shut down every node that's running a copy of the blockchain every 10 minutes in real time. They can't do it.
Okay. Yeah, no, I like that. I see the path, and I understand.
This is what creates a better incentivized world. This changes culture altogether. Yes. So if you can't print money out of thin air as a Federal Reserve and then give it to your special interest groups, then that buy politicians, now what happens? This starts to dissolve. The power of the state no longer has the power of force and coercion because there's nothing to come after, because they can't take your Bitcoin. This is what changes society, and this is what everybody's so damn worried about. This is what the mega powers on the planet, the banks, not the corporations, not the government, the banks. The greatest trick the devil ever told or ever did was convince the world that it didn't exist, right? Nobody fucking blames the banks. It's the banks, people. It's not the corporations. It's not the government. Are they guilty parties? Of course they are. But the root of the evil is the banks.
What are your thoughts on? Well, I'm with you on the Bitcoin thing. There's like a part of me though that's like, I'm just waiting for some kind of government regulation that they're going to impose on.
Doesn't matter.
And how do you get around things like, I know, like
exchanges,
Coinbase,
all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, like what's the safest Coinbase to use?
Well, all right. So exchanges are exchanges. Now you will find guys out there like Swan Bitcoin. There are what are called Bitcoin maximalists, and I hope you find, if you want to find them through me, I will tune you in to Bitcoin maximalists. They don't shitcoin. They don't do any other crypto, right? Like it is Bitcoin, and it is Bitcoin only. That is the mission, and it is a better vehicle than libertarianism than spreading this, right? So when you look at exchanges, when you go to a foreign country, what do? You trade your money. In an exchange, they give you ruples or they give you dinars or whatever it is you're exchanging.
Right.
Same thing as crypto, only you don't have to, go to the airport. You don't have to go to Western Union. You don't have to do any of this remittance bullshit. Now, with these people who will do exchanges like Swan Bitcoin, they're not even technically exchanged. There are miners out there. People who mine Bitcoin are rewarded through the incentivized, protocol to mine Bitcoin because they get it and then they can sell it and then they can live. When when this happens, they can't be regulated, right? Like miners, what are you going to do? You can't do anything to those guys because they exist here, they exist there, wherever. You can't shut all of them down, and you can buy straight from a lot of those people. So if you buy Bitcoin, you better buy it and you better put it in your own cold wallet. Get it off exchanges. That's my advice to everybody.
Okay, and that makes sense. What are your thoughts on didn't the Fed last week start to make an initial for a Fed coin coming out like during Thanksgiving? They just secretly dropped it. I think I read that somewhere.
Well, so Bernanke's actually publicly talked about this out loud, right? He's talked about his white papers on a what's called a central bank digital currency, and this is your choice. A central bank digital currency, which is issued by the central bank, the Fed, is going to come into existence, and they're going to pay government employees first, and they're going to pay government contractors first, and they're going to dangle carrots in front of people with badges and guns to do heinous shit. And if you don't do it, you're not getting paid. Also, if you're like us and you're a thorn in the side of the banks, the state, the zombie corporations that live off of the government, if you're a thorn in the side of those people, what are you going to get? You're going to get a social credit score just like the CCP. You're going to be able to travel. You're going to be able to get loans. You're going to be able to do any of that kind of stuff. Is your money your money? It's not. Bitcoin's your money. Are US dollars your money? Nope, it's not. Is silver, gold, and all those certificates, if it's not in your possession, that's not your money either.
Right. Okay.
This is something for people to really understand. So this is your choice: force and coercion with central bank digital currencies, or you get Bitcoin, and that is peace and consent. Is it perfect? No. Is it digital dollars that are fiat bullshit that control everybody? Absolutely not. And that's what crypto is as well. And really, if you look at history, the US dollar is one of the first digital currencies because only about 30% of it is actually in the banks. The rest of it is just thin air zeros and ones on some, ledger server that they have, tucked away somewhere.
Okay. All right. I like it. I like the idea of it. I think people that aren't completely aware of it watched it just tumble. Yeah. And so they're like, oh, just like all the other coins, they're all bullcrap.
So let's address this a little bit because
please.
Today, one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. And if it's in your wallet, you can trade it with anybody on the planet. The code for Bitcoin has not changed. It has not forked. It has not, done anything. It's been, the block height has been increasing. I think we're at damn near 700,000 blocks of Bitcoin, so every 10 minutes, there's a new block that records every transaction there is. It hasn't changed. If you look at the volatility in markets, what you're seeing is manipulation of the US dollar. You've seen $8 trillion printed into existence in the last 2 years under both Democrats and Republicans, right? So if you've just introduced $8 trillion, which, by the way, took the U.S. up till Barack Obama to do 235 years to acquire that much debt, $8 trillion. And now we're sitting at 30 trillion, and we did 8 trillion in 2 years. It's over. This idea that that's not the volatile market, just because it's got, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in it. You're looking at what is market cap. Market cap is how much money is in this area. So Bitcoin, you're looking at probably somewhere around, if it's at 15, 16, you're probably looking at somewhere around $300 billion in Bitcoin right now. When it was at $69 or whatever it was, I think we're sitting at right around $1 trillion in Bitcoin, and made major news. The thing is this value for a Bitcoin doesn't change. And once you start to introduce halving to people, so every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin that is mined is cut in half. So we won't actually mine the last Bitcoin until 2140. And when you see that one Bitcoin today is not only, not inflationary, it's actually deflationary money. What you're talking about is over time, as people lose their keys, as they lose their cold wallets, as things are gone, your money is actually worth more. So now let's zoom way out. If you wanted to buy the earth The Earth is about $400 trillion worth of assets. It is. And that's land, that's bonds, that's foreign exchanges, that's everything. Total debt on the Earth right now is about $400 trillion. Now, if you were to take 10% of that, which is what gold is, right? 10% of that is gold. And that's about a $10 billion market. You would be looking at over $2 million a Bitcoin minimum. That's just 10%. So this is the most asymmetric asset you could possibly own. Hey, I'm not telling you go out and do it. Do some research. Read some books. The Bitcoin Standard, the Fiat Standard by a guy named Safadin Amos are great starting places. The Block Size Wars and the Bullish Case for Bitcoin are all extremely good books. And I'm going to tell you, I'm a guy that's got, probably close to damn 10,000 hours on Bitcoin and studying it versus the other cryptocurrencies and Austrian economics. Like these two are harmonious. They are built, Bitcoin is built on Austrian principles. So, go out, study it, maybe get a little, if it pans out, it might actually be worth something. But just word to the wise.
How much Bitcoin do you have?
My cold wallet got lost in a boating accident with all my
Oh yeah, same with my exactly. Do you go to the Bitcoin conferences in Miami or whatever?
Yeah, I went this year in 2022. Absolutely some of the greatest people I've ever met in my life. It is a giant kumbaya. We love each other. Some of the smartest people. I mean, I'm literally the smartest people I have ever met. Like I interviewed a guy that worked for SpaceX last night as one of their lead software developers who's creating this thing called True Vote that works off of the Bitcoin blockchain for voting. So there is absolutely no tampering and none of that kind of stuff. His name is Brett Morrison. Awesome guy.
Yeah, I started listening to that podcast a little bit. I was like, wow, that's an interesting thought. Speaking of like Bitcoin and conferences and stuff like that, why does it seem like every libertarian, I would say besides you, is just like autistic or just kind of weird dudes, and like they're like it's not I'm
kind of a weird guy, man.
No, you are normal. I've talked to other libertarian people, and it's always been like this, like everything's black and white, and it's like there's no gray area, and it's like
I think what I mentioned earlier, I'm gonna give credit where credit's due. I'm gonna tell you psychedelics.
Okay.
And empathy, the ability to understand where other people are coming from. Yeah. Where like this is a journey. Like I'll tell you, when I started down this road, I was not an Austrian, I was definitely not into economies. I was not into understanding things at a much deeper level than what was provided to me by places like Fox News or, literally. I mean, I was that guy growing up, and I mean,
same.
And so when I wasn't questioning, when I wasn't thinking, when I was taking the narrative, when I was taking talking points, and I was going to battle with liberals every day off of talking points, instead of going and, hey, you know what? I used to be there. I can empathize with you as where I used to be. This is difficult because here's the thing is it's a journey. And until you get to the point where you can empathize, where you can see, and you're not just pissed, right? Because that's the thing. A lot of people wake up and they're just like,
I go through that.
Veins are popping out of their head and their neck, and they're like, "Hey, you fucking idiot!" Like, I was there. I get it. I was a giant rage monster. But then I was like, man, you were at one point you were figuring this shit out, man, and you didn't have the answers. You didn't have what was the concrete bedrock, the principle was. So hey, extend a little grace. Extend some knowledge, tell some stories. Like this is, I think, one of the things that most people miss, right? Is like, what is your experience? What have you overcome? What have you seen? What are your mistakes? What are your feelings, shortcomings? And what have you persevered through? What have been those nuggets? Because for me, failing wasn't ever a problem, right? I was very good at failing, but I would fail fast, and I wouldn't look at my failures as negatives. I looked at them as these teaching moments. Like this is something that I could glean something as like, okay, it didn't work this way, let's try it this way, or let me learn from that guy. Like if you're super bright and intelligent, you can pick up on other people's mistakes.
Yeah.
And then go, man, like maybe I shouldn't be doing that kind of stuff. This is the difference, I think, in what happens with a lot of libertarians out there that are mad, they're pissed, they're paying taxes, which they think are theft.
Yeah.
A system of like, 20% that have ruled over their lives for way too long. And I think a lot of people are mad, and they don't realize that people who are coming into this space are new to this space. They're not going to be, guys like me. You're like, not overnight. It takes a lot of damn reading. It takes a lot of listening. It takes a lot of study. And that's it. I think that's the difference.
That's awesome. Yeah. You didn't have an Aleppo moment. So that's a W in my book.
Foreign policy is foreign policy. Let's not do any of that shit. Let's pick some of our own stuff.
Yeah. Or the Arizona libertarian who started talking about age of consent for sex or something on stage. I was like, whoa, where are we going with this? What the hell, dude? But
wood chippers for pedos, man. Like, what are you talking about? Like, we put down dogs for biting kids. Like, I mean, I don't know, pedos. Yeah, you're going to the wood chipper,
dude. But like, you just mentioned something that just triggered something in me, where I'm just like, dealing with failure, I think is like I would love to learn from you from that, as somebody who you were looking at what was going on in the world, and you're like, I can make a difference. Like, I have a vision. I have like desire to make people's lives better. I know the answer. And then not winning and not progressing. And how did you deal with that feeling? And like, did you surround yourself around people, or did you go talk to someone, or was it all just psychedelics?
Well, like a little bit of it was an internal thing. You got to get over what other people think first and foremost, right? Like, hey, listen, if you're into if winning is all that matters to you, you'll win tyranny, right? We're winning tyranny in this country every fucking day because somebody's team won, and hey, it's more tyranny, right? Like, fuck. Like, at some point you got to be like, no, man, like, I don't care if it's tyranny slower, or like Michael Malice says, Republicans are just Democrats driving the speed limit.
Yes.
Oh man, it's tough, right?
Yeah.
How do you deal with knowing you're gonna lose? And that was a really tough thing, right? Like that was you have to get to that point where you're like, no, man, I'm gonna learn. I'm not going to lose. I'm going to learn. I'm going to readjust what the mission is. I'm going to readjust what the purpose of a run like for governor is. I'm going to readjust what my run for 2020 as a senator was. Like, I'm going to lose. What can I do with a soapbox and talking to people? And here we are. Here we're having this conversation because I was like, you know what? I can take these ideas. I can put them out there. I will get a fraction, and we're talking about a rounding error of a % of the news coverage of these assholes. God. But in a moment where I got to actually hang around on the same, stage and breathe the same air as these elitist, pompous.
Yeah.
You guys heard something. And here we are. We're talking about more things with more audiences and things like that. So it's just perspective. It's like, man, if you're one of those positive people that can see failure as a positive instead of a negative, which also your indoctrination told you got to pass every time. You can't fail, right? Like, if you fail, you're a dummy. If you fail, you're not as good as the other kids. If you fail, you're not going to be on the dean's list. Like, all these things that you were indoctrinated with. Learn to fail and fail fast. And then look at where you're struggling and where you're banging your head against the wall and make adjustments. And I'll tell you what, this is the spiritual side. This is, I don't claim to be of a specific religion. I grew up as a Christian. But, having, breached the continuum with, things like psilocybin, you start to see it as a very different thing than they wanted you to see it as. And so when you're starting to see this, I don't know, this process of living your life, man, you get one. That's it. There's this thing going around on Instagram. It's like every man lives two lives, and doesn't and realizes it starts living as God, I totally fucked this one up. But he really starts living when he realizes he only has one. So when you realize like you get one go at this, man, what did you do with it? Did you stand? Did you take a stand for freedom? Did you take a stand for liberty? Did you take a stand for your neighbors? To just say, you got to leave them alone. What are you willing to fight for? What does your life mean? And like that passion should be enough to help you detach yourself from this mob of like, oh man, I got followers or I got likes or whatever, that dopamine hit is.
Yeah.
Or like, hey man, like I understand, you're mad. I understand you disagree with me. Like, what is it going to be? You're going to fight everybody on Twitter? You're going to fight everybody on Facebook? No, you're going to sit there and either you're going to ignore it or you're going to embrace this person with a Socratic method where you're going to start to maybe distill some knowledge through the cognitive dissonance and everything else. And, if you can do these kind of things, you can walk between tribes, and the people that can walk between tribes in peace and give knowledge and things like that, man, those are God's people. Like those are the people that we need to start like looking for. And like, oh, I see him there. I see him here. I see this person over there. It's like, hey man, let's put away our silly little monikers because they're not getting us anywhere. I've been experiencing the same damn stuff, only worse time and time again. It's like, well, you can call me a libertarian, you can call me, I don't care. Like, I don't care. It's like, I will go and break bread with somebody. We'll talk, we'll have discussion, talk about like family. We'll talk about passions. We'll talk about, what your aspirations are. Is like, what are you doing in life to not hate your life? What are you doing in life to where, you're separating yourself from the machine? What are you doing in life to separate yourself from everything that they told you had to be? Like, at the end of the day, did you take a step towards freedom? Did you take a step towards being independent? Like, that's a verb. Can they take away your food supply? If you can't, that's a very hard person to tell what they have to do. Can they take away your job? If they can't take away your job, that is a very hard person to like tell them what to do. If you are, independent with water and energy or heat and all that, you're living something that was, the idea of America. And I think that's what's probably been lost is like the idea of independence that we celebrate July 4th and July 2nd and July 3rd every year. That is, it's a nice gesture, but at the end of the day, if you were celebrating independence, you'd have a garden, you'd have some chickens, you might have some goats, you might have a little bit of land, you might be doing whatever it is that, to move towards those things. Is it easy? No. Is it understandable by most of society? No. But at the end of the day, is it rewarding? Oh my God. Yeah, man. Like, I'm a homesteader. And so like I get to feed my kids venison, bear. I get to feed them, things that I, produce in a garden, chicken eggs, like all of these things that are, what I think independence actually is. It's just the ability to tell the man to fuck off.
I love that. So what would you tell somebody like me that lives in a fucking apartment and miss the bubble?
Hey, you're 20, right?
No, I'm way older, dude.
Yeah, but you're in your 20s.
No, I'm in my 30s.
You're in your 30s. So was I before I got it. Like the light for me didn't switch on until I was about 33 years old.
Okay.
And
I'm 37.
Yeah. Hey, it's okay. Now it's like, okay, what are you willing to say, you know what? I can downsize. I don't need this shit anymore. I can do it this way. I can start out from meager beginnings. And I'll tell you, when I did that, when I stopped with, the corporateness and all that other bullshit, and I really simplified my life, started having a family and moving towards this goal, that was the first step and the most daunting task that I've had. And I'm telling you, I've done a lot of things. If I fought through Fallujah, I went into Marine Special Operations, like all these things, to become independent, to shrug off what society thinks of you, man, to move into that place where like most people wouldn't survive. Like it's a giant, it's a path. It's a journey, and you've got to chip away with it. You've got to, little by little, it's like, all right, let's downsize. And I'll tell you, when I started doing it, those early years where I had nothing, where I was eating like mac and cheese and hot dogs and bullshit, like I was like, man, these are actually some of the best years of my life, because they're more intimate, they're more humble. And when you go through that kind of stuff, especially with, like your wife and your kids and everything else, it creates character.
Yeah, no, I love that. No, I'm a late bloomer, and I decided to get my master's degree later in life, and I'm the idiot that paid for it. And now I'm watching people get debt forgiveness. I'm like, what the fuck?
Oh, that's, yeah.
Like, bust my ass working DoorDash to pay for this stupid degree. But, so do you feel like leaving the city and kind of living in a rural area is just healthier for you and better off?
For me, it is. And this isn't for everybody. Can you be independent in suburbia and maybe even in a city? It's possible. I haven't done it, and there are people who have. If that's your kind of lifestyle, if that's the vibe you like, then do it. Like I will tell you, if you find your passion, it's much easier to do these kind of things. If being independent isn't your passion, don't try. Please don't try. You're going to fail spectacularly.
Yeah.
But if independence is your passion, and that is what you will toil for day and night and think about, it's something that you will realize. And here's another trick of the universe, right? Is like, if you're having these internal monologues, if you're setting goals internally, whether it's through prayer or meditation, whatever it is that you do, reinforcing that vibration that is set in the back of that mind, now that it becomes subconscious in your lower mind, that starts to feed what your actions are in your higher mind. In your higher mind, the prefrontal cortex, the PFC, right? Mm-hmm. The prefrontal cortex is where your actions come from. It's where your thoughts come from. And so if you're storing these things at night, when you get up, when you're giving gratitude for what the small things that you do have and where you want to go and what you want to do, if you do this over and over, that resonance, that energy, that vibration is going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Are you going to do it perfectly? No. You're going to learn along the way. You're going to fail along the way. You are going to sometimes eat shit and be humbled. And that is, I think, the universe's way of saying, hey, not that way, idiot. This way. Stop trying to get through that brick wall you're in front of. There's a door over here. And sometimes you got to ask, hey man, show me the open door. Show me the path. Mm-hmm. Like, I am on my knees, like, in front of God and everybody else. I don't care. It's like, humiliate yourself, be humble, admit that you don't have it figured out. This is life, man. Like, I'm still figuring shit out. Like, I really am. There's stuff like I bang my head against the wall all the time. I'm like, why am I not being able to break through with this? Sure. But that pain, that struggle, that is you becoming a better version of yourself. And I'm telling you, if you can think about it and you can, meditate, you can pray about it, I guarantee you stick to it and you don't get too comfortable, it is going to manifest itself. It's just the way that the universe works.
The idea of being humble, where does that stem from for you? Because like you said, you're not a Christian, like you're not professing Christian faith anymore, but obviously does it start from there for you?
Humble beginnings. Man, I would like to say yes, but I don't think so. I'm going to give credit to a lot of my coaches growing up. I played football in Georgia and was part of a squad in Georgia that absolutely never lost. Like, we kicked ass. We won the state championship and quad A, which was the biggest, and all that. But the thing was, you weren't allowed to talk. You were, no talking smack. You went down there and you played smack mouth football where you just absolutely ground people down and drove the ball down their throat and ran it into the end zone time and time again. I mean,
Amen.
it was God's football, right? But at the end of the day, man, if they caught you talking shit, if they caught you winning without some class, boy, it was over. And so what it was like, you can be the best in the world, but that was today. That's yesterday, right? Tomorrow, what we always said in special operations is like, the only easy day was yesterday. So, okay, cool. You want to say championship? Be in the weight room tomorrow morning. We're going to start talking about the plan for next year. We're going to start getting after it tomorrow. And that's what it takes, I think, in terms of being humble, is like your best yesterday isn't good enough. And so if you can realize that in a moment, and be grateful and understand that you probably didn't get there alone, I think it's pretty simple to stay grounded.
Okay, man, I like that. That's awesome. It's kind of refreshing to hear that too, as far as like moving out of the city, because I just see so many people on the right. There's like, get out of the cities, and somebody like me, I push into the cities because I like helping people. It's just it's something I don't know if it's a gift or if it's like a calling or whatever it is, but I have to be in the midst of the suffering. I can't run. I don't know.
That's the thing is, we need it there too, right?
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
we do. We have to have people like that everywhere. Like, you're giving yourself, you're giving your charity, you're giving your time, you're giving your ear, you're giving your experience to younger kids, or maybe even, I don't know, older kids. Like, if you're willing to give of yourself, man, that's what this world needs more of, right? Is like, okay, yeah, you know what? That might not be the easiest area to be independent, but if you're fulfilling your passion, it's probably the best place for you to fulfill, being independent.
That's awesome. Well, cool, man. I like to always like kind of leave a podcast with like a final kind of thought and a positive thought. And like, what do you think? I think in 2022, integrity is something I'm seeing less of. And what does like being a man of integrity mean to you?
You get one name, man. I guess you could change your name, move around, all that bullshit. You can't really hide anymore on the internet. I talked a lot about Bitcoin earlier. Your reputation is going to be everything going forward. If you're a unscrupulous actor, like, it's going to be really tough. I think it's going to be one of those things. And for me, man, integrity, I found out the hard way. Last story, I swear.
No, please.
Me and my younger brother by a year, we had enough with Ned Flanders, who was my neighbor growing up, right? Literally, had a mailbox with a cross on it with more bricks laid into it that had another cross. And hi diddly ho, their neighbor. He had lots of kids. They homeschooled, and I didn't understand them. I had no idea. Nicest people on earth. But at the end of the day, we were like, yeah, these people are really weird, and we feel like it's an act. And you know what? For Christmas, let's go egg their house. We did. We egged their house. We stole their lights. We were like 7 and 8 years old. We were idiots. And then, we got caught. One of our buddies, best kept secrets are the ones that you never tell. And so my dad found out, and my dad, being from Flint, Michigan, was like, hey, you idiots, we're going to go make this right, and we're going to do it the Flint, Michigan way. So we went over to the house, knocked on the door, man. Before Mrs. Flanders opened the door, man, we were bawling. We were just so ashamed of ourselves, and to try to get out, of your lips what we had done to these perfectly nice people, and then just like have her be like, come here. Man, oh man, like, it'll bring me to tears now. But
yeah,
didn't bring my dad to tears. Brought my dad to like rage, but like at least he was cool about it. He was like, all right, go get the ladder, go get the hose, go get a scrub brush. You're gonna wash the entire side of their house. Wow. And I'm inviting all your stupid neighborhood friends over here to poke fun at you while you do this. And he did. He went and got them all. He got it in his little S10 Chevy and got them all, and brought them. Like once we were done washing the side of this house and people were having their fun with us and everything else, he took us all around, all the neighborhood kids, and he said, probably the one thing that stuck with me forever is like, don't do it if I was standing over your shoulder. Ask yourself the question, would you do it if I was standing over your shoulder? I don't think I had a problem with integrity ever since then. It was just like, what, man, it basically, what you do when nobody's looking, that's what counts. Are you accountable to yourself? If you're accountable to yourself and you've already had that discussion about what your lines of demarcation are going to be, man, life is pretty cut and dry.
Wow. I love that. Like, what a powerful image of your father being over you as you're about to do something stupid. Later in life. And
from Flint, Michigan, no less. Like, that guy loved the belt. Like, he was just like, no, we're not playing that game. But and maybe the last like, I'm not smart enough to lie, right? Like, I'm not smart enough to be that guy that's got a capable of lies. So if you're a crayon eater like me, man, telling the truth is just the easy way out.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe that's why you're a libertarian. Just to wrap it all up. Shane, I've always said I would vote for any politician that's willing to go on a podcast and talk for an hour without commercial breaks. I think that's what distinguishes the people that shouldn't be in office from the people that should, because you're a normal person. I appreciated just kind of you opening them up and talking about stuff and talking about your father and Bitcoin, and we did the whole gamut. So, man, I just appreciate you, and thank you so much for being a part of my show tonight, man. Any final thoughts?
Oh, man, Derek, I feel like I got a new buddy. I appreciate the time. I appreciate your questions. Yeah, I love your presentation here. Like, you've got a good style. You got a great flow.
Thanks, man.
You got a kick-ass audience over here that's all about doing stuff with you. So I think, man, keep doing stuff like this. You'll have to come on my show, and
anytime.
We'll talk about whatever comes up, whatever's in the news, Elon, Biden, the Fed, like whatever you want to talk about. There's so much. But hey, really humbled to have the time and space, and anybody that gives you a platform to talk on, man. Always thank you for all the grace. Appreciate it.
Hey, man. Hey, I appreciate you, and I'll be on your show anytime you want, man. We could do this as many times as you want.
Cool.
I appreciate the talking.
Thanks, Derek.
Thank you so much for everyone in the chat. I appreciate you guys so much. I hope you guys have a fantastic night. And I will catch you guys on the next episode of the Derek O'Shea Show.